learning about Gemara. We are up to Daf Kuf Lamed Ches. So we're continuing to discuss the rules of a Shchivmera, and we're up to right in the middle of the page, Tanu Rabbanan. We're learning like a sequence of halachas, Kuf Lamed Ches Maral. So Tanu Rabbanan. This is pretty straightforward. The Gemara over here. It's a new case. About 15 lines from the bottom of the page. A new Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned. Shchivmera, a person who's lying there and is about to pass away. Now remember, a Shchivmera, the unique halacha that the Chachamim said, whatever he says, is you can record it and write it in a shtar, and it's fully documented because this is how it's going to be. It's ironclad. But in order to be a Shchivmera, is two criteria. First of all, he has to be dying, number one. Number two, he has to give away his entire estate. If he retains anything for himself, that indicates to us that he doesn't really believe that this is the end of his life, so therefore he doesn't have the din of a Shchivmera. We also learned that you can have a matnas body ke'ein Shchivmera. A person, while he's healthy, and to avoid machlekes in the family, he decides, you know what, I'm going to distribute all my assets now while I'm still alive, so there won't be any future machlekes, but I'm still alive. So therefore he does it like a Shchivmera, which is mahayim alachamisa. It won't take effect until after the guy said passes away, but Mahayim, it starts today. And we said that the way it works is sort of transferring the item itself to the children, but the use of it, I'm retaining, like a life tenancy in a house. So what happened to Shchivmera said, these are instructions. Tunu Masayim Zuz Lepleni, give 200 Zuz to this person, to Ruvain, V'sholosh Meyes Lepleni, and 300 Zuz give to Shimon, and V'arba Meyes Lepleni, and 400 Zuz give to Pleni. He's dividing his estate. So, Ein Oimrim, we don't say, Kol HaKoidim B'shtar Zdoiche. We don't say, well, whoever he said first, is the first right to it, and the second person, the second right, the third right. We say it all happens in equanimity because, I believe before, when does it actually take effect? After he passes away. They all take effect at the same time. Sorry? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, by a healthy person, if he says, not proportionally. If you're right, there's not enough funds. We don't say, a healthy person says, Reuben, you get $200, and a minute later says, Shimmy, you get 300, Yehuda, you'll get 400. So then he only has $400 in his estate. You go 1, 2, 3. But you're right. Over here, everyone gets the same, or proportional, whatever is there, because there's no first and second and third. Okay. So what's another din? What happens? Lefichach. What happens? Yotza olav shtar choyv. Sorry, skip the line. But Omar, if he clearly said, Tanu Masayim Zuz Lepleni, I want you to give $200 Lepleni, and it's still a matter of Shchivmera, actually he's giving away all of his assets, and then he says, Va'acharab, and whatever's left, Lepleni, after Reuben, I want you to, he clearly adds the word Va'acharab. So now he's making it a sequence, he's making it sequential. And the Acharab Lepleni, then we say, then we say, first come, gets the first right, and then whatever's left over, the second, and then left over to the third. Therefore, Yotza Olav Shtar Choyv, in this case. In case number one, I skipped the line before as well. Sorry, don't know what happened. Let's start again from Rabbanan because I skipped a line here. Okay. $200 to that person, $300 to that person, $400 to that person. We don't say we don't say because he mentioned Reuben's name first, he gets priority. Therefore, if there's an outstanding loan for, say, $500, give him a kulam. He takes the $500, we all lose out, and then you re-subdivide whatever's left. Because there's no priorities here. But Omar Tanu Masayim Lepleni, if he said give 200 to this person, the Achar of Lepleni, and then give to that person, the Achar of Lepleni, and then give to that person, then we say there is a priority here, 1, 2, 3, and therefore if an outstanding loan comes out, give them an Achar, because the first two people can say we left you our assets to collect for what he comes to us for. When we took ours, there was still money there. Ain't like if there's insufficient funds by the last person, then Gaiv Mushafana goes to person number two. And ain't like if there's still insufficient funds, then Gaiv Mushafana goes to number one. So even though the Shchibana, if he clearly delineated 1, 2, 3, then we break it up as 1, 2, 3. Says the Gemara, Torah we learned. Shchiv Merasha Amar, Shchibana said, Truma signs Zuz Leplani. This is what he said. He said, now the din is a B'chai get double portion. Remember, we learned before, even according to Rabbi Yochanan Bereika says that you can be marbet to one child and give less to another child as long as they're all rightful heirs. But everyone agrees when it comes to the B'chai, you can't tamper with the B'chai. Because the trader said the Yochel Bakir. The trader said clearly you cannot tamper with the B'chai, even though the B'chai might be the son of the woman that you dislike. You have to give that son their entitlement. So the second part is what you cannot tamper with. But the chelik pasha, the ordinary parts, the father, according to Becha at least, can increase, decrease. So what happened? The father uses the following wording. He says, "Tnu masayim zuz leploini b'ni b'choir. Give $200 to my son the b'choir. Karo what he deserves." What's he adding? Karo a b'choir gets whatever it is, double portion. So we interpret his words that he meant over and above his entitlement of b'choir. He's my b'choir. I love him. I want to give him more than I want to give him as a matanim. A matnas bari $200. So noitlon the noitlas b'chorase. He takes his entitlement as a b'chayr, plus he gets the extra $200 because I said extra wording. Would have to say koroloi, and we'll see later. This goes according to Rabbi Akiva that's very pedantic, and every word you say, if you add any extra words, it has to have significance. Why else would you put it in? And in this case, we interpret it to mean I want to give extra. But what happens if he says im amma bibchorase? Give him $200 as his b'chayr. Not the extra words rola, he said as his b'chayra. So now there's two ways of learning it. Is he saying that this is a substitute for his b'chayra? So he sounds like he's saying that this is what your b'chayra should be. But the Torah says you can't tamper with the b'chayra. So therefore we'll say that the b'chayra now has a choice. If the $200 turns out to be more than his entitlement of b'chayra, as a b'chayra he maybe there's only $150 extra for him, then he can say, I'm taking $200, my father gave it to me. If the $200 is less than the b'chayr, father can't tamper with his b'chayr, I'm going to take my entitlement. So in that case over here, you don't get double because there's no extra words here, but the b'chayr is a thing. Though. And we did learn before, however, a b'chayr has a right to be meichel. Remember we had a whole discussion if he's meichel one part of the b'chayr, is it across the board or just that one part? Because the rest is like leib bal oilim, you haven't divided that. But anyway, if he says b'chorase yodai al el yaina, the b'chayr now it's his decision. Ratza neitlan, ratza neit b'chorase. So it's his choice if he wants to take his rightful amount, or take this $200 if it happens to be more. What about a shchivmara? The Amar he says the same thing now. The same thing we have a b'chayr will lose the same thing by a wife. He has to give her a ksuba. A person passes away, he has to give his wife a ksuba. So Shchivarat says, "Tnu masayim zuz leplainis ishti." Give $200 to my wife. Fair enough, which is like the ksuba. But he adds words again, ka ro'lo, like she deserves. Extra words. Why extra words? He's giving her extra. Is noitlas son v'noitlas ksuvasa. She's entitled to ksuba, which is 200 or whatever her ksuba there was, and takes this extra. But Imam, if he says big ksuvasa, this should be, this is what is within your ksuba. Then again, yada al yona. Then it's up to her what she wants. For example, if she was a ba'ula when she got married, she's only entitled to $100, and here's $200, so she can say, no, forget the ksuba, I want the $200. It's up to her. We did learn before that if a husband says, I'm going to distribute my estate to all my children, and my wife is going to be one of my children, then even though she'll end up with less than the ksuba, we say that she forfeits the ksuba because she's having the pleasure, the hana, that she's treated an equal member of the family, and and she feels something for it. So she's prepared to be moichel. So I'm not talking about a case like that. So Ratzon at Lasa, Ratzon tells us up there. Ushchimra, but Shchimra, the Omar Truma signs with Leplini, Balchoy Koroloi. But if he says, the Shchimra says, give $200 to that person outsider, a lender of mine, that Koroloi, which is what he deserves. Again, they're adding words that are not necessary. So it's as if you give him a gift. A good question. The only thing we'll have more later a concept where that a child is very dear to you, so you want to give as much as possible. So that's number one. Then we go look zoo. A wife is not really the child, but still as well. And then here you have a total fremde, and still. Oh, but the imam of b'chayva, if you use the word that given the $200 within his chayv, Noiklam b'chayva takes it as his chayv, and if the chayv happens to be more, then he's still on the rest. That's the din. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Mishum the Omar because by the case of Balchai, he said, give the Balchai what he deserves, what is suited to him. Therefore, he should get extra money. Why'd you get extra money? And even though we're asking the question about Balchai, the question is also on Abchai and Isha, but by Balchai, but it's even more pronounced. You don't love the person, it's a business transaction because he said a few extra words. Therefore, we're giving him an extra money. Why is that? Can you say that? Yeah, that's interesting. Why he's not a Shayla B'Ribis? Because when he juxtaposes this $200 with the deal with Karola B'Chayv, maybe what he meant with the words Karola is what I owe him. And the same thing by a B'Chayv. What I owe him as a B'Chayv, and what a wife, what you owe as a Ksuba. How do you know the word Karola something means an additional matana? Rav Nachman said, you're right. This Gemara, these laws only conform with one opinion, Rabbi Akiva. Huna. Rav Nachman, Huna told me, interesting, Rav Huna. Huna told me, I guess it was like a Talmud. We had many cases of Huna and Rav Nachman got together. Amar Huna told me, Hamani Rabbi Akiva. This follows Rabbi Akiva. And what's so special about Rabbi Akiva? Something that we learned much earlier on. The Dayik Lishna Yisera. He is pedantic. What do you mean? We had a machlekes if a moicher ba'ayin yofa moicher or a moicher ba'ayin ra moicher. People generally very thrifty when they sell as little as possible, or they're very generous. So we said over there that when a person, if you sell everything and you retain the boy, the cistern that's in the backyard that I'm keeping for myself, and we had a machlekes, the owner who's selling everything but keeping the boy, does he have to buy himself a path to get to that bar, or generally you're holding it back? How are you going to get to the bar? So the Chachamim say, you keep as much for yourself as you can. Obviously, you're meant to keep the derech for yourself. But you sold everything, and I have to negotiate with you a way to get to my bar or my dus. Then we talked about that if you're selling a house, even if you say oimka v'roima, what's the air rights and what's underneath the mining rights, but it does not include the boy of the dus that's out there in the back. It's not really part of the house. Part of the dus are not ancillary houses, are part of the house. Nothing to do with the house. It's to do for me to sustain myself, not the house. So the house is not included. So what happens if I said I'm selling you the house? I excluded from the contract. Now it was unnecessary to exclude it from the contract because even if I wouldn't have said those words, the boy is not included in the sale. So by me excluding it, what else am I saying? It says the Gemara. Now we learned if you say if I sell you a house, the boy and the dus is a different shape of a bird, are not included. Even if you write they're not included. So therefore, now the tzarich likach loy derech, and you have to buy yourself a road. Rabbi Akiva. So even though the boy and the dus are not included, and therefore, since moicher ba'ayin yafa moicher, I need to negotiate with you to be able to get to my boy. Rabbi Akiva. The Chachamim say, ain't totally good that the Chachamim say, no, moicher ba'ayin ra moicher. For sure, if I retain, since the boy belongs to me, of course I made sure I had a way to get there. However, umoide Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's moide. Bizman she'amar loy chutz me'elu. If he said chutz me'elu, except for the boy, except for the dus, if he added that in, which is unnecessary, then why did I add that in? I want to add something. Normally, I say I sell you even my way, even my path to get to the boy, right? But now that I said I'm excluding the boy, which anyway was excluded, what I'm really saying is I'm excluding the path to the boy. I want to retain the path of the boy. So in other words, what's Rabbi Akiva doing? He's darshaning extra words. Why you say chutz me'elu? Why did you put it in? To signify something extra. Alma kivin lo tzarich. It was unnecessary. You still said it. You're saying it in order to improve your situation, to have a derech. Is hachinam same thing here? Even like tzarich. Since the father didn't have to say, "I'm giving you $200," Corolla, the word Corolla, or to the wife, or to the balchay, Corolla is totally superfluous. He wants to add something that didn't have to add. Yeah, you didn't have to add. Now the Rabban don't argue with that principle, but Rabbi Akiva is the one who says it clearly, so therefore we mention Rabbi Akiva. What we learned? We learned Ashchiv. Now this is a very Gemara here, and the account of the Gemara is: does a bezdin, if a bezdin sees something coming out from another bezdin, do they just accept it as fact, or do they do their own investigations to double check to make sure? Is a bezdin check after another bezdin, or they just accept it? And therefore, the question and the nafkamina is, how meticulous does the first bezdin have to be? If the first bezdin knows that the second bezdin is going to rely on everything they write, and even though they know the situation and they thought we're going to do our investigation whenever it comes to that, you can't do that. They have to make sure they do all the investigations initially, because the second bezdin is going to rely on them, and you can be machshel them because they're going to so on. And that's for example, generally speaking, if a bezdin issues a get to a couple, and you use that get to go to Yisrael, they're not going to accept it as edus that they're Jewish. They will not accept it as edus Jews, because the bezdin is not responsible if a husband and a wife come to the bezdin. We want to have a get. They're not going to go and say, prove you're Jewish. They don't have to know what the bezdin here does. They don't have to prove it because might not come in. If they want to say that, if nobody's going to rely on a get to say that therefore I accept you as a yid. That the bezdin here does differently, I don't know. If you know, yeah. Okay, but in a sort of example, the law is they will not rely on a get if a person, you have to prove you're Jewish. I know people, I write letters to people that are Jewish, so unless they trust me that I'm Jewish, and they say if they brought, I had just a case right now, they showed their get, but so proves nothing. Because we want to help them out. If they think they're Jewish and he wants to marry again, or she wants to marry again, fine, we'll give them a get. What damage can happen? So yeah, all these things you have to be very aware. So Tana Babilon. A person is dying, but usually we talk about he's distributing his wealth. Here he said, I owe $100 to that person, which means that the Yorsha now will get $100 less. But we don't know if it's true or not true. So the question is, can the Eidim write it down as a fact that they owe money to that person or not? Says the Gemara here, Eidim Kaisen, the Eidim could write down, and not as a star, but as a recording, in order to remember the last, the words that the Kaisen, they write that what that this Shchibna on his deathbed said that. Sorry, all the way around. Yeah, that this guy owes his money. That this guy owes me money. The Shchibana said, not that I owe the person money, that's what I'm talking about, so I meant the other way around. That this guy, this stranger, owes me $100. We don't know. The stranger might deny it. We don't know. So what did the Eidim do? So the Eidim therefore can write that the Shchibana said on his deathbed that Reuven owes him $100. They have absolutely no idea who this Reuven is. They have no idea if it's even true. But all the writing is that the Shchibana said so. If then the children want to go ahead and collect from that person the money, they have to prove that it's true. Just because the Eidim wrote down a paper and two Eidim signed the paper doesn't mean it's true, because they didn't do any verification. Because we're allowing the Eidim to write what they heard. So how does that prove that it's true? Nothing. So therefore, if they want to collect money, they have to prove it. David Amer and the Chacham say no, ain't kaiser. They cannot write it down. Why? As the Gemara will explain, we're worried that if a bezdin sees a document with two Eidim signed that Reuven owes a person $100, they're going to rely on the document. They're going to assume that the Eidim either saw it or they did their investigations, and two Eidim say that this is a fact. We're worried about bezdin toyin. Yeah, but the moment you see Eidim signed, people think that it must be. Yeah, and true. Even so, we're worried about a bezdin toyin. even though there's the chance of a Bezin is far and few in between, but not everyone knows halachas. And how many times we say Amoida cursed that other Amoida, this is only a Bezin who, Tzitsta, whatever, all different strains they use that don't know what they're doing. Elim Kane Makidin, unless they know for a fact what they're writing down is correct. Because the Bezdin will think that the Eidim must have done some investigations before they put their name to something. Before you sign, you always, you want to make sure it's right. You don't sign on something which is a furphy. That's what the Chacham is saying. We're worried about Bezdin time. They're going to rely blindly on this. And we have it in Shlaksh had a rule in Ksubis that Eidim that sign a Bezdin, Nasa Kimisha Nechke Dusim the Bezdin. When Eidim signs as if they were interrogated and investigated and everything is, the truth. Says the Gemara, in that case, then, if we're going to say if we're going to disallow Eidim to write something, unless they did their investigation, then Taka Bezdin can't rely on them. So, so the halacha is not Bezdin do they make a mistake, not a mistake, and therefore Eidim. The other way around. If we allow Eidim to write something without, one opinion says we allow the Eidim to write whatever they want because we know that Bezdin won't make a mistake because now they know that Eidim to write something doesn't mean anything. All they're saying is, like you just said, we heard this from that person, they'll do homework. But the other opinion is the other way around. We don't allow the Eidim, and because we don't allow the Eidim, unless the investigation, a Bezdin can rely on them. So like a cause and effect changes around. Says that's one version. Amar Nachem Huna said again, there's a lashon Amali Huna. The same thing, but the reverse names. Tana Rameya says, Rameya says you don't write because we're worried about Bezdin Toyin. And the Chamaim and Kaisrin. The Chamaim they do write because we're not worried about Bezdin Toyin. Because Bezdin will do their own investigations. And this is more explained. The reason is, why shouldn't Eidim write it down? What's wrong with Eidim writing down? This is what we heard. We're worried that Bezdin might make a mistake and think we can rely on this document with two Eidim signed on it. Allah is that we're not worried about Bezdin Toyin. We believe that all but they didn't know what they're doing and they're not going to make a mistake, and therefore Eidim can write it down. What are you talking about the Maishlam? You're telling me we're not worried about Bezdin Toyin, but we learned else what we are worried about. Rava said, "Ein cholzin." If a woman comes in with a man and says, "Okay, he's going to be machlitza, I'm a free woman," you cannot sign up as a Bezdin and give a document until you investigate and make sure this is Taka brother-in-law. She can bring a friend in, pay for a guy a few dollars or an actor, and says, "Come in here and let's go through the motions so I can be a free woman." So if the Bezdin is going to give a document, they need to do investigation to make sure that this is Taka the husband, or this is Taka the, bring the marriage certificate in first, or something. Bring the raya that this is the brother-in-law. Amar Rava says, Rava ain't chelzin elim came makidin. The Bezdin says, Rava says we don't give chalitza unless we Taka know that this is the brother-in-law. The aim and manin, and so too. If a girl comes in, she's just coming 12 years old. She wants to be mayin her brothers or her mother or sisters married her off. So what do you call it? So the din is she can walk away. You have to bring evidence that this is Taka the husband, and that she's walking away from, because she might bring a friend that she's scared to, doesn't have the guts to bring the husband in front of the husband and say I don't want you anymore. So therefore she brings a friend guy. So you better have to do the investigation. Why? Therefore, because we make sure that the Bezdin doesn't sign up unless they know for a fact whatever they're writing is a fact. Koisvin get chalitza, we get me so we write a get chalitza and what do you call it, and get me. We do write it. So so why taka do we? So now, yeah. So we started with saying, So we started with saying, "Ein chalitza ein gemakinim, ein gemakinim." The fifth case get chalitza get me. And therefore you can write a get chalitza and you can write a get me if you know why taka, yeah. Exactly. So the next Bezdin can rely on it 100%. So the second Bezdin, Alpha B Makini, can go ahead and accept this thing here and do everything else. Why? So my time Why does the first bezin have to do all their homework and everything else? Why do they do the whole homework? Because if the first bezin did not do all their homework, then we're worried that Choshe the bezin time, because the second bezin will rely on the document, and we're Choshe they're not going to do the second homework. So why did you say before by Adim? It's not a problem. We're not worried that bezin not going to make a mistake. They'll do their own investigations. And yet by Chalitza we say that the only reason why the second bezin can go ahead and rely on it because the first bezin did all the homework. In other words, if they wouldn't have done the homework, we're Choshe bezin tayin. What's the difference? Was it loy no? If you have a document that comes out of a bezin where a bezin gives a geshpanka, the second bezin does not. What's the logical wording? They don't double check whatever. They don't verify the bezin is a word for it. I forgot the word. They don't verify what the first bezin. They trust the first bezin, right? So therefore, the first bezin has an obligation to make sure that they do all the homework properly. When it comes to Aiden writing a document, we are worried that the bezin is going to rely on them, and the Aiden, like in the case of Shchibra, are going to sit there and say that that we heard from the Shchibra, they'll write it down because they want to remember what the guy said, because the guy is dying, we'll never have a chance to ask him again. So therefore, by a bezin will check what the Aiden wrote. So that's why, and that's the difference. So we're worried about a bezin toyim. So we worry about a bezin toyin. So by Adim, we're not worried about bezin toyin because bezin knows that you can't rely on Adim write on their own. We have to double check. But when it comes to a bezin who's giving out a document, bezin must make sure 100% that everything they write there is accurate, because the second bezin will not double check what the first bezin did. Because they don't, the simple reason, because they themselves don't want to be double checked whatever they do. You don't want to have people standing right behind you all the time and checking everything you do, and also because it's evil in the michal, so therefore you have to be very careful. So therefore buy a get the chalitza and all these things or everything else, a bezin has to make sure that whatever they give out has to be 100%, because the next bezin will rely on that. But in the case we started off saying that by a get, there it's irrelevant if the husband is a yid or not. If he claims he's a yid and she wants to be a free woman, or she claims she's a yid and he wants to be a free person, then what do we have to lose? And everyone knows that. So therefore, there's no problem of a bezin being nichshel. Mashain came over here. Okay, one last little mishnah of. We learned before that if a father decides he wants to distribute his wealth, he can give it away while he's alive, and so he gives the goof to his son. But the paytas he gets to keep. And we looked at the previous mission, therefore the father can sell the paytas while he's alive, only till he passes away. The son, if he sells the property, doesn't take effect until he dies. And therefore we learned before, if the son predeceases his father, there was no sale. Says the Mishnah, Ha'av, Toilish, since the paytas belong to the father, in the case we just said, that if he gave it to his son, the son doesn't take over till the person dies. So while the father's alive, he has the paytas. He has a right to give it to whoever he wants. Sell it. Give the paytas whoever he wants. Like we had yesterday, that behold, you're talking about the paytas. Sell it. And therefore the father cuts it down and he can feed it to whoever he wants. And anything which was cut off and is lying there on the ground, Harehu Shel Yoshin is not part of the gift that he gave to his son. He gave to his son only the goof after he passes away. He gets the paytas. So any paytas that were tolush before he passed away belong to the father. So what happens to it when he dies? It gets divided amongst all the Yoshim. It's not part of the matana that goes to the that he gave to his son. Because what did he give to his son? The goof. The paytas he kept for himself. So these paytas that are cut off the tlushin is part of the Yerushin, goes to the rest of the children. So the question is, what about the paytas that are still growing, are still attached? Is that considered part of the matana when the father passes away and goes to that son that you gave the property to? Or do we say, no, even while it's attached, it's part of the Yerusha, because it wasn't what you gave the goof of the karka, not the paytas, and that goes to as part of the Yerusha. Says the Gemara. Sounds from here, tolush in mechubeloi. It sounds from here, where do we treat as paytas only if it was already harvested? So it's not part of the karka. But if it's part of the karka, even though it's paytas, it's not the karka itself, it transfers to the son. That's what it sounds like. But I have a problem with that. But Tanya, didn't we learn? Shamin es ha-mechubari lelekeach. We learned that if a father sold the property, if the son, who's supposed to get the property after the father died, sold the property to somebody else, and if the father then died, and the son already unsold and anything else. We said that anything which is like fruits that are growing on the property, we assess because the Lekech didn't buy that. The Lekech only bought the land. That's all the son lives on the land. They only got the land. And the fruits we have to work out. So what's the value of the crop? And the Lekech has to give it back to the Holy Ocean. No, so we see that the payers, even if it's growing, is not considered part of the karka, where the son sold it to a friend. So why in the case where the father passed away and there was payers there, we say, oh, that's part of the deal that he gave to the son. It should also not be part of the karka. It should be payers. Can bibnoi, when a father gives the son, he loves the son and he wants to be very generous, but I even gave him the karka. So therefore we say that the father thinks, you know what, if I pass away, it's still part of the ground, I'll treat it like karka. And it'll be part of the gift. Mashenke, once it's cut off, it's paytas. Or the kan ba'achar. Over there, he sold it to another person. The son sold it to a friend of the person. He sold it to a friend of the person. There's no love there between. It's just purely a business transaction. So karka is karka, and not the crop. But and the das of a person generally is much is it's not just you want to give as much as possible, so you're very generous. Like Akiva says, it goes even further when it's your own son. Okay, and then we come to the very last Mishnah of Yesh. We finish. We don't really finish Yerushas. We talk about later.